Denver Broncos at the Kansas City Chiefs. It's Sunday at 1 o'clock, the very first 1 o'clock game of the year for the Chiefs here in Week 10. Favored by 8.5. They're undefeated, 8-0 Chiefs against the 5-4 Denver Broncos.
And this was one of those history games for you where the Chiefs and Mahomes have some absurd record against the Broncos. I think he's only lost once against Denver.
Is it? Because last year the Broncos won last year.
Yeah, I think that was
they
the
went
first
1-1 last year, and the Broncos gave them some pretty good games. Remember, last year, through 5 or 6 weeks, the Broncos had one of the worst defenses in NFL history. They'd given up 70 against the Dolphins. They had given up 100% completions in back-to-back first halves against Justin Fields and Tua, 32 for 32, like crazy stats. And then they shut down the Chiefs offense. So that was when it was like the turning point in Denver's season last year, was losing to the Chiefs in a competitive fashion. Then they beat them later. So that, 8.5, it might feel like a lot the way Denver's, I think, overachieved this year. To me, it comes down to Bo Nix against Spags. Can they get anything going on that side of the ball? Because I think Denver's defense at least has a chance to be competitive against the Chiefs offense.
Yeah, anything going, or can he make enough ad-lib plays? The sort of Justin Fields way of approaching the game. Can he simply break enough contain to move the ball anyway with scrambling or broken plays to get enough going? Can he do it within structure and can he do it without structure? Either way, can he just make enough plays? I think you're right. I think it's moved a point. The sleep wrap has it as 9.5, so it's moved slightly towards Denver. But yeah, I think you're Kansas City's offense, I think, looks pretty good now with DeAndre Hopkins arriving. I think that opens up, much like Devontae Adams arriving in New York has opened things up for Garrett Wilson. I think Nuke arriving in Kansas City has opened things up a bit for Travis Kelce and for some of the other players. You still have that anytime threat of a Xavier Worthy big play out of nowhere. I feel like their offense is pretty solid. And then it really comes down to, can Denver's offense do anything? Because that's a good defense they're going up against.
Yeah, Denver's defense has been good this year. They've been very impressive. Defensive front, a deep rotation of guys that can get pressure. They're going to need all those guys in this game to slow down Mahomes and the Chiefs. Last week was not great against Baltimore. Didn't stop the run very well. Certainly gave up some big passes. So they're going to have to play their best ball. Patrick Surtain against DeAndre Hopkins should be a fun one. And if they can take Hopkins out of the game and then put a little more attention toward Kelce, maybe they've got a path to slow things down. Used to have Justin Simmons back there who would pick Mahomes off at least once a game.
Right.
He already got his pick on Mahomes back with the Falcons earlier this year, so you don't have that, instant turnover option there for Denver this year. But I really think it's the Broncos offense. I think their inability to consistently run the ball, a Chiefs defense that is outstanding against the run. And, once again, I was impressed by how well the Bucs ran the other night. And then you go back and it was Bucky Irving's 7 carries for 22 yards. I mean, they were working hard to grab 3 and 4 yards at a time, Tampa Bay, the other night. Denver has the ability to run the ball like the Raiders did a couple weeks ago against the Chiefs, where the running backs went 14 carries for 15 yards or whatever it ended up being. So if that's the case, you're in trouble. Mm-hmm. There's rumblings. They're always asking Sean Payton, and it's always players that I like. All the questions like, Sean, why aren't you playing player X a little bit more? And it's all players that I like. It's always Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin, and now it's Audric Estime, model genius, because he fumbled 6 weeks ago.
Twice.
You can't have that.
He's fumbled the first time.
He's got 2 fumbles this year.
Yeah, he fumbled immediately, got sent to the hole for a month, and then came back and immediately fumbled again, and now he's never going to play.
Because it's funny, because on paper, Denver could have a good running game. Jaleel McLaughlin's a good, jitterbug type, and Audric Estime with some size, and Javonte Williams can still break some tackles, even though he's probably underwhelmed compared to what expectations were years ago.
Yeah, well, he had that knee injury that I think
the injuries have
probably affected him significantly.
For sure. But to me, talk about the run game a little bit in this. If they just pound their head against the wall and they go 20 carries for 35 yards, and then it's like, okay, Bo, hit some 3rd and 18s, hit some 3rd and 12s, hit some 3rd and 9s, they're in trouble. If they can run the ball effectively and slow the game down, and then give Bo Nix some 3rd and 5s where he could scramble, pick up a few first downs with his legs, then maybe Denver's got a shot here, I think.
Yeah, Bo Nix honestly is a big sort of X factor in this, because it's not He's not Jaden Daniels, but his ability to scramble and break contain is significant. Like, that can potentially slow down the Kansas City pass rush. Can maybe make them play a little bit more contained, because really, I mean, for Kansas City and Spags, you would probably say if we just contain him in the pocket, we win the game, right? If we actually go nuts and come after him, that's more dangerous. If we let him outside of the pocket to make some plays on the ground, like, he could lead the team in rushing again. That he's way more dangerous that way than he is, let's just keep him in there and make him go through progressions and beat us with his arm. I don't think he's going to do that.
The one other place, it's all the players that I like would probably have to play well for Denver. Like Audric Estime, Troy Franklin, when he gets behind the defense, actually has to catch the ball this time. They have to connect.
That would be good.
Kansas City's cornerback 2 situation, where they're banged up. Jalen Watson's injured. Nazeed Johnson, Joshua Williams, those guys trying to fill in there. It's been a weakness for the Chiefs, who like to man up on 3rd and long and leave those corners out there.
And that's such an area, like, they
wanted Marshawn Lattimore, right? They were trying to trade potentially for Lattimore to fill that spot.
But the Broncos should be able to specifically manufacture a Troy Franklin versus substandard corner one-on-one deep shot, right? Like, if the game plan is to create that matchup, they should be able to do it pretty easily, because obviously Kansas City is going to want to cover Cortland Sutton as the primary threat. They'll leave a second corner on Troy Franklin. Okay, he hasn't caught a couple of these deep shots, but he was so good at that in college. I feel like he has to connect eventually.
I felt the same thing about their guy Marvin Mims. Like, they got to have some flip the field type of plays here.
And he was really good at that in college as well. Like, why are these guys that were amazing at this one specific trait in college, they show up in Denver and suddenly that's the one thing they can't do anymore?
It's all Sean Payton's fault.
Meanwhile, little Jordan Humphrey is taking endless targets instead.
All that said, I just want a quick reset on the Broncos. They're sitting here at 5-4. They're probably staring 5-5 in the face. But I've been impressed with how they've played this year. I think they've overachieved. Their conversation that you had about the Saints yesterday, about how they're going to have to sit there and have dead money and the same players next year. Denver's sitting here with all this dead money from Russell Wilson. They're not supposed to be competitive this year.
They're paying Russell Wilson $30-something million to play for the Steelers.
Right. So, look, overall, very impressed with Denver. Feisty defense. Bo Nix has shown enough flashes where you're like, hey, maybe there's something here. I think they'll have a tough time this week, but they played really well against Kansas City last year. We'll see if they can do it again.
By the way, there's a hilarious scenario playing out potentially where the Steelers and the Broncos meet in the postseason, and Russell Wilson is being paid $30-something million to knock the Broncos out of the playoffs.
Oh, I need this. Yeah, that would be nice. That was like the Stafford versus the Lions. Like, I was rooting hard for that matchup.
Right. At least the Lions weren't like directly paying him to beat them.
Maybe it's in the AFC Championship, Broncos and Steelers this year.
Maybe.
Doubt it. All right. Steelers by 8.5 here. Over-under is only 41.5.
Steelers by 8.5?
You see, you messed me up talking Steelers.
I know.
We'll cut that out.
Well, you've got a -1 for that. I've got a -1 for talking about James Conner in a game that he wasn't playing in.
I felt that malfunction happening in your brain, and I related to it strongly. I'm like, there's a lot of information up here. The Kansas City Chiefs are favored by 8.5 at home against the Broncos. Chiefs aren't used to playing so early. They're always at 4 in the night. Is this too early for them? It's like a morning game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Denver keeping it closer than that. I feel like Kansas City wins, and probably reasonably comfortably, but I think that they at least keep it, within 8.5.
That is the last thing I'll say. I mentioned it the other night. If you look at Kansas City's schedule and the defenses that got wrecked by others and did not get wrecked by the Chiefs, they were merely good. Like, the Chiefs were just good against the Raiders and the Bucs and the Saints.
Right.
Merely good. Kind of played down to play a little, closer game.
But
I'll still take the Chiefs.
This is last week was the first time they put up 30 in a long time, and they left meat on the bone there. Like, DeAndre Hopkins arriving, I think, has genuinely changed the potential for that offense.
I agree. Last thing, somebody in the chat was asking me about comparing Baker Mayfield's turnovers to Mahomes. I know the interception totals are similar. Mahomes' turnover-worthy play percentage is way lower. Baker's got the second most turnover-worthy plays. Mahomes has actually done a pretty good job of throwing underneath, taking care of the ball this year. So the interceptions were kind of fake for a while for him.
Yeah.
The 11-9 touchdown to interception ratio.
The bigger thing to focus on there is more, again, the high-end plays. Like,
he's got an ankle injury too, by the way.
Yes.
He's practicing. He'll be fine.
Which,
he played well on it the other night, but we should mention that too.
Which, to be fair, he had coming into that game and then re-aggravated it with that run. But the Mahomes thing to focus on, I think, is less the turnovers, which are disproportionately high relative to the amount of time he's put the ball in harm's way. It's, again, he hasn't had a lot of big plays this season. Like he's had a couple. I mean, obviously that play to Nuke Hopkins in the last game was impressive, but according to PFF, he has 7 big-time throws this season. That ranks 23rd in the NFL.
He didn't have many last year. I mean, that's just the way the offense has changed. I think Hopkins definitely creates that trust in against when Denver blitzes, creates that havoc. He has 2 guys he can trust now.
By contrast, Aaron Rodgers, who Stephen A. Smith wants to retire, he's playing so badly, has
double that. Probably.
Has 18.
Yeah,
so 7 versus 18.
Shouty shows, man. You'll take Denver. I'll take the Chiefs, and Harry's on Denver as the underdogs here.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.